Sukihantu and good evening to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dhammadana series brought to you by Buddhist Mahavihara Malaysia. Today's session is also live on TBC and Facebook. Do subscribe our Facebook for more information. The topic for tonight is There's no path to Nibbana via Dana, Sila, and Bhavana by Dr. Gamini from UK. Dr. Gamini is a doctor who have gained some experience of enlightenment. Let's welcome Doctor to join us in our live sessions. Good evening, Doctor, and over to you now.
Good evening to those who are in the Southern Hemisphere, in Malaysia, and good day to others elsewhere in the world. Now, today's topic is there is no path to Nibbana via Dana, Sila, and Bhavana. Before I move on to the talk, I just want to do a correction in my last talk. By slip of the tongue, I mentioned that Kala in Pali means Dhamma, but it is actually Kala means time, or Kala or Kaliko means time, and Akaliko means timeless, and Dhamma is timeless because Dhamma, the arising and ceasing, both happen at the same time without any time in between. So let's move on to Dana, Sila, and Bhavana. And last time I talked slowly so that you could get used to my accent, so that the words and the pronunciations are clear. But today, as we have to cover a lot, I'll go a little quicker, and I hope you will be able to understand the words and hear the words clearly today. Now, to start with, we must know what we are talking about, what's the path, what's Nibbana, and therefore what's the path to Nibbana, and whether the things that the religions have advised, particularly Buddhism, whether they are in unison with the path to Nibbana, whether they actually help in the path to Nibbana or whether they actually obstruct the path to Nibbana. Remember, this path to Nibbana opens up within you, within your physical body. And it is what you can do is to only to provide the environment for the eye of prajna to open up so that the path to Nibbana opens up. So, if ever you do things even without your knowledge, that is not in unison, that is obstructing the path to Nibbana, and that does not provide the suitable environment for the eye of prajna to open up, then your fruit will not be achieved. At the end, the result will not be achieved. Now remember, there is in this path to Nibbana, ultimately from the beginning to the end, the Buddha stages, or in Theravada, it's called the Arahat status. There are 8 steps that you go up in a form of a ladder, in the sense that when you go up, you have to take your foot off from the step below to climb on to the next step. That means whatever you did in the previous step has to be completely left alone or left behind to move on to the next step. So there are 8 in it. There are 4 main stages, and each stage has a path and a fruit, or path and the result. And the first stage is the path to the next stage, that is the stream entry. It's in English is translated as stream entry, but in Magadhi it's called Sota Panna. Stream means a stream. It has been stream has been taken as an example to denote the arising and ceasing of Dhamma, the way it is, or the actual what we call reality. The Dhamma, as I mentioned in the last talk, arises and ceases. And this keeps on repeating without any connection to the previous arising and ceasing. This is very important, as in Abhidhamma, they have tried to connect this arising and ceasing to the next arising and ceasing in the next moment. So it is very important to know that if there is an arising and ceasing and it completely ceases, ceasing means it ceases to exist. It means that nothing is stored to be taken to the next moment. And this is what we call anitya. That means not permanent, and also called impermanence. So if that's the case, then they've taken it as an example and compared to a stream that flows slowly, and that is what you call sota. Sota means a stream that flows slowly, as opposed to an ocean with with lots of disturbances on the surface of the water. Particularly, they are like rough movements on surface of water. That goes round and round, and the waves are seen over that. And this is called ogre. Ogre means uh, something that moves in a circle, and that state is the state when you are awake through vijnana, through your mind. And in that state, there is no path to Nibbana. It is obstructed as you are communicating through your senses with outside your physical body. Whereas the prajna, when the prajna eye opens, it brings about the information that is within your body. So it's completely different system. And so the ogre, or the waves that you see that goes around in circles, obstruct the path to this stream. There is a stream, what is called reality or Dhamma, or also called Sankara, because it contains information, each particle that arises and ceases. This is different to what you see when the mind is active. If the mind is active, there is a circle that goes round, which is called Paticca Samuppada. That means the cause and effect, the circle of it's called a cycle as well, and a circle of cause and effect. So first, you get through a series of events, you get a thought formed in your mind, and after that, that thought nourishes the attraction between the body and the mind, which we call tanha. And because the attraction becomes even stronger, then the next impulse or image that comes through the sense organs will fall on the mind, because there's a bridge between the body and the mind. And that results in the next thought. Then the first thought is called bhava. And then the tanha gets nourishment, and it binds body and mind together. And the next one then comes through, because the bridge is now stronger. And that is called punarbhava. Punarbhava. Punarbhava means, punar means new. It's a completely new thought, nothing to do with the previous one, not connected. And that is also important, because in Buddhism, and particularly in Abhidhamma, they have tried to link the one thought to the next thought. But in this cycle of Paticcasamuppada, you have a thought first, which is called bhavo, and also called bhava. Bhava means an event. And that event then results in the strengthening of the bond between the body and the mind. And then it allows another impulse to come through, because the bridge is now stronger between the body and the mind, and it results in a new thought. Because you saw in between the first thought and the second thought, there was something happening. The nourishing or the tanha becoming stronger. And that tanha becoming stronger is known in Pali and Magadhi as Sayam Saro. Saro means becoming nourished. Sayam means by itself. So by itself, the system creates a system by itself. The bridge becomes stronger between the body and the mind. So the stronger the bridge between the body and the mind, the more likely that images, impulses come through your senses, pass through this bridge to the mind. So that is what we call Oga, or the one that goes in circles or cycles. So this cycle has to be broken, and that is why Paticca Samuppada has to be destroyed for somebody to open up the eye of prajna inside. So you must provide the environment, suitable conditions for this Paticca cycle to be destroyed. If you do anything through the mind or by being awake through vijnana, what happens is this cycle becomes stronger, the tanha becomes stronger, and the cycle keeps on going round and round. And that is what we call oga. Whereas the stream that we are talking about, when somebody enters the stream, or what we call stream of reality, or stream of Dhamma, or stream of Sankara, it flows very slowly, gradually. It is compared to a stream that's flowing gradually without these cycles or without these disturbances on the surface of water. And this stream, in this stream, there is arising and ceasing, continually happening, but each event of arising and ceasing not connected to the previous one. And that is what we call impermanence. So today's discussion about Dana, Sila and Bhavana, we will try and see whether during these events or various practices, whether we provide the suitable environment for this Paticca cycle to be destroyed and tanha, or the attraction, to be destroyed, so that the body and mind can separate. It's only when body and mind separates off, and that happens when the attraction between the body and the mind is destroyed, then only the eye of prajna will open up. It is so important to prevent this nourishment happening to tanha from thoughts. So that means, that is why I keep repeating, I mentioned this in the previous talks as well, Cheto Vimukti, or release from the thought process, or relinquishing the mechanism that produces thoughts, only leads to the opening of eye of prajna. If ever you do an activity or a practice that strengthens this the bond between the body and the mind, then it becomes an obstruction. And if we discuss now what dana means, what sila means, what bhavana means, what is its original meaning, and see whether that actually happens without a thought, without nourishing tanha, without creating the paticca or the cycle, or without this cycle that's called oga. So from oga to a sota, which means from a disturbance to a neatly flowing slow stream. And stream entry means that at that stage, the whole body becomes part of that stream which is found in nature and the way it is everywhere. And so at that time, the prajna I will not differentiate from outside and inside. There is no space, there is no time, and it is only a stream that flows gradually. It's compared to that sort of event. And it is not, the stream entry word is also not very accurate to describe everything that happens during seeing of Buddha when the eye of prajna opens. It must have been introduced a long time after the demise of the Tathagata, but currently that is the notion that's available, that's mentioned in the books. So we will leave it at that because it gives some information, some kind of understanding as to what happens during seeing of Buddha. Actually, seeing of Buddha happens after seeing Dhamma. So first stage of that seeing, or the darshana, is also called darshana, which means seeing, is seeing Dhamma. And Dhamma is seen as these tiny particles that arise and cease, which have no connection to the next one that arises and ceases, and that continues as if it is what's happening in the nature, and that we call the way it is. And in fact, Dhamma means the means the truth. Amma means the mother. So the mother nature's truth is exactly way it is. Although we don't perceive it through our eyes, we perceive a conglomeration of it, collections of those sankhara or dhamma as a physical body or an image or or light or sound or touch, and they are all made up of sankhara in the medium of light, and your organ that sees light, like the mechanism, the eye, the nerves, and the brain and the mind, all made of those sankhara. But don't see them as separate sankhara through your normal eyes, as they are not powerful enough to see. They see as the outlines, the images, and as the light falls, whatever the light that's not absorbed to that object is reflected off from there to your eyes, and you see it as an image, which is an illusion, which is what is not actually what is outside. And now here in this situation, we are going to tap the knowledge that is stored inside our bodies. So let's take first dana, right? And you for yourself can understand whether this helps the process of moving along the path to Nibbana, whether it becomes an obstruction or whether it is a different, completely opposing, that whether we move 180 degrees backwards by doing these practices. These practices have been about more than 50% of Buddhism, and in addition to worship, reverence, uh, uh, that sort of other activities that are associated with this. These are the three main things they are talking about. In fact, these are the three main things that are prescribed in other religions, such as Hinduism and Jainism. So these practices from those religions, which were there before Tathagata was born, has now come into the religion called Buddhism, and people have started practicing, expecting results, whether they will see or Nibbana or Buddha. Because there have been no such people who had seen Nibbana or Buddha after the vision, Buddha vision or seeing Buddha became converted into a religion. Now a new notion has arisen that you cannot see Buddha this birth, this time. You might have to be born somewhere else and then come back to this planet Earth or born here to attain Nibbana. And I think that's a fallacy that's misguidance, and that's taking people in the wrong way. When it is clearly said and it is now practiced and seen that it is true, that Nibbana can be achieved at this now, here and now, at this moment while listening. And that is called Sanditiko. Sanditiko means here and now, and you don't have to postpone it. And there is the story in the circles saying that even if your hair on the head catches fire, before you put out that fire, you can achieve Nibbana. You can attain Nibbana. It's so quick, so instant. If you had provided the environment for this tanha to be destroyed, and that environment begins with Cheto Vimukti, release from the thought process, so that there are no thoughts to nourish the link or the bond between body and the mind, which is tanha. So if you want to destroy tanha and allow the body and the mind to separate for the eye of prajna to open up, you must not nourish tanha. It's pretty obvious. You shouldn't do that. And that tanha gets nourishment from thoughts. So if ever you do anything that provides thoughts, and sometimes thoughts one after the other in a series, it becomes the worst situation you can ever be in. And you completely turn around and go backwards. So let's take dana first. What does dana means? Dana means not giving, right? It's very important to say that this is something that's entrenched in Buddhism. Dana means to give something to somebody else. It could be material, it could alms giving, or it could be even talking about Dhamma. And that is, both those notions are completely wrong. Now, even this talk has been mentioned as a Dhamma Dana talk. It is not Dhamma Dana. Dhamma Dana actually happens when Dhamma gets destroyed, the arising and ceasing stops during the process of seeing Buddha, during vision, or during darshana. Then in that, instead of Dhamma arising and ceasing, Nibbana arises. That means Dhamma arising and ceasing stops. And then Prajna sees that position, that state as Nibbana. And that is Dhammadana. That is when Dhammadana happens. Dhamma is relinquished, given up. So dana really means giving up, not giving something to somebody else. It's relinquishing, leaving behind. So if you see Dhamma and then leave behind Dhamma, and you will enter the next stage, which is Nibbana. So from Dhamma to Nibbana, it's called Dhammadana. And that is what it really means. That means you are relinquishing, you are leaving behind Dhamma. So that word has been taken and wrongly used to things like alms giving. And even people print books and say this is for Dhammadana. It doesn't happen. Dhamma is within you, and Dhammadana happens. Dhamma only can leave behind, nothing else. So Dhamma has to arise and cease, and then the arising and ceasing must stop to be left behind. And then the prajna will see the next step, which is Nibbana. And that is the stage of Dhammadana. And that is why Dhammadana is considered and also mentioned in the books as the greatest thing that can happen. Because one sees Dhamma, the prajna sees Dhamma, and then the Dhamma ceases to exist. And Dhamma is relinquished, left behind. And then the prajna moves on to the next stage to see Nibbana. So dana means leaving behind, not giving. So currently, it's practiced as giving. And that's completely a wrong phenomenon, and that's the wrong notion, wrong conception, and that's been borrowed from other religions such as Hindu and Jain religions. It's in a society, it looks like a very good thing, but that's fine, but it does not help you to move along the path to Nibbana. The reason being, to give dana, as they call it now, you have to have a thought. And they say you have good thoughts when you give dana. You become happy. You are happy that you have given something to somebody else. So that's a thought. So does it help you to move the path of Nibbana, or does it obstruct? It's pretty clear that any thoughts, whether it's happy or sad or neutral, they all obstruct the path to Nibbana because they all nourish tanha and binds the body and mind together, so that the eye of prajna cannot open up, because it opens up when the body and the mind separates off. So it is difficult for people to understand that having a good thought obstruct the path to Nibbana. If you understand the basic principles to the path of Nibbana, you will know that any thought, whether it's good, bad, or neutral, obstruct the path to Nibbana. Because the Tanha doesn't know whether this is a good thought, bad thought, or a neutral thought. They are all thoughts. They are all nourishment. Food for Tanha. So if ever you think that you are doing something good and giving it to somebody else and be happy about it, and also, not only these days, they expect something back as well. Either they'll expect you to be pushed into the path to Nibbana, or you expect something even bigger than what you have given, even more valuable than what you have given. And that's completely wrong attitude. So we give something expecting something to come back, and that's even worse. And at the end of these sermons, once you give dana to priests as food, they tell you, you must have heard, Ayu Vanno Sukham Balam. That means Ayu means long life, Vanna means nice color to you, Sukham means happiness, and Bala means power. So let's see, they say, from what you have done today, let you get, we hope you will get long life, nice color in your skin, and happiness and power. Power for what? Nothing. So they are all mundane. They are all at a level of the five senses. People become happy listening to that. The mind becomes happy listening to that, but it does nothing to the eye of prajna. In fact, it puts it down further. It obstructs the arising of eye of prajna even further. So anything that produces a thought, whether good, bad, or neutral, they all nourish tanha and prevent and obstruct the path to Nibbana. And dana, taken as giving to somebody, or even expecting something by giving talks like this, will obstruct your path to Nibbana. In that sense, in the second scenario I mentioned, they think Dhamma is what you talk. Somebody talks about the path to Nibbana, it is Dhamma. It is not. It is what that person talks. Dhamma is within you. Dhamma that arises and ceases and stores its information within your system, inside your body. So they have taken the definition of Dhamma completely wrong, and on that they think if you give that to somebody else, actually you can't give Dhamma to anybody else. It is within you. You can only see what happens to Dhamma when the eye of prajna opens up. So at the beginning of the discussion, the young lady said, Sukhi ho tu. Sukhi
Hi.
means
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
Doctor, would you like to check your mic because we can't hear?
All right.
Um, Audience, can you give us 1 2 minutes to check out? Thank you for your
Right.
patience.
Okay. I think one easiest thing is for me to come back because it doesn't say mic is uh, muted. It's on actually. Um, Let me come back. Go back to the.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Can you give us 1 2 more minutes to test it out the environment? We will get back to you soon as. Appreciate the patience and can you wait for a second? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clear now. Can doctor continue? Thank you so much.
Okay. Am I live on now?
Yes, doctor is live now.
Right, okay.
Thank you,
Uh,
doctor.
Sorry for that interruption. We were talking about how uh, giving dana instead of relinquishing dhamma, giving dana to somebody else, or even printing books and giving talks like that, has nothing to do with dhamma dana, which happens at the time of seeing. Dhamma is relinquished, Dhamma is then destroyed, and move on to the next position, that is Nibbana. So you first see Dhamma and then move on to the next position of Dhamma, of Nibbana. So Dana, whether you do it with a good thought and happy after giving something to somebody that you have given away, something that you had, uh, it obstructs the path to Nibbana. So then we come to Sila. What is Sila? Sila is a control of behavior of yourself by telling yourself what you should do. And when you observe Sil or take precepts, what you do is for a period of time, for a limited period of time, say for 6 hours, 8 hours, or for a day or two, you tell yourself. And usually what happens is somebody repeats it. Somebody keeps saying something and then you repeat it and accept what that person has said. So there is you at that time and there's also the other person. And one person tells the other person accepts. Okay, I will behave like this. And you have normally 5 precepts and you will behave according to that. So it's a control of your behavior accepted by yourself, that this is how it should be. And there is also self involved, not one self. There is the other person also who gives those sila to you, to instructs you. This is how you should behave, also involved. So it is a complicated situation where everywhere there is self. Whereas Dhamma and Buddha, there is no self, which is called anatta. So if ever I said in the last discussion, that if you have a thought, every thought has the notion of self entrenched in it. Because the way we form a thought, and the thought is formed by identifying that object or whatever that is said, going back to the memory. By going back to the memory, you identify the object or understand something. So you always go back to the past stored information. And past stored information comes out, as I said, mentioned last time, is called Nama Rupa basket. And the balance of the one basket has Nama, the name, and the other one has a Rupa or the image. And then the 2 baskets are linked by a rod called me, because it becomes your knowledge and self. So this self is there in every thought. So if you think you should not do this, you should behave like this, then what happens is it becomes a thought and it entrenched and enhances the bond between the body and the mind. The tanha becomes stronger and it will obstruct the path to nibbana. So this sila, it is well known even in the books. In one of the sutras called Karaniya Metta, which is well known in the Buddhist circles, there is a stance saying Dittincha Anupagamma Silava. That means Anupagamma means not coming to, not doing that. Dittincha means a myth, untruth. Untruths like sil, you should not come to. Dittincha anupagamma silam. It clearly says that the next verse is dassanena sampanno. That means darshane or seeing. Here is seeing Buddha. Sampanno means you achieve. You achieve seeing of Buddha by not coming to myths like Sila. It is clearly stated there. Dittincha anupagamma silava dasanena sampanno. Still, that is interpreted completely differently. If you take word by word and how the words are linked, it means that that myths like Sila should not be attended to. You should not come to that sort of stage to achieve the vision. And also, everybody knows, and I'm sure people in Buddhists in Malaysia will also know, when you become a stream enterer, at stream entry, three things are lost, and they are mentioned in Pali as Silabhata Paramasa. One of them is Silabhata Paramasa, Sakkaya Ditti is the other one, and Vichikicha, third one. Vichikicha means the doubt. The doubt you have whether your body consists of Dhamma and Buddha. Because by thinking, by observing, by studying modern science, you cannot understand how the Buddha or the highest knowledge is stored within your body. So that doubt goes destroyed when the vision arises, because you've seen it, the Ayuprajna seen it, so there are no more doubts left. So that doubt clears. That's one. The next one I mentioned was Sakkaya Ditti. Sakkaya means your own body. There is this notion that I have a body and I can see it, I can feel it. So this is mine. Because it's only a thought. So this Ditti means a myth. That is a myth. Like Dittin Chanupagamma Sirava, I said at the beginning. The same, like Sakkaya Ditti, that there is a myth that you feel or think that this body is mine. This body belongs to me. It's I who owns this body. And that notion also goes because you see no body at the time that you see through the eye of prajna, because you will see all just particles arising and ceasing. That's all. And that is the stream entry. That is the entry into where it is, the nature, Dhamma or Sankara. So those are the two things I have mentioned about when you become a stream entry. Now the most important and the first one is Silabhata Paramasa. Sila, you know what it is. It's control or behavior of this. You assume there's a person called me first. And that itself is a complete obstruction to you go against a brick wall, you can't go any further. The moment you assume that it is me who has to do everything to attain Nibbana, you must just provide the environment without me for the eye of prajna to open up and see Nibbana. So here, Sakkaya, Ditti, Vichikicha, if you leave those two to a side and take the first one, Silabhata Paramasa. Sila is the control or behavior of you. There is always self there, already there. You don't have to say that again. When you say Sila, itself is already there. And the next is Silabhata, comes from two words, Sila and Vruta. Vruta are traditions. So traditions are also done by a person called me. It comes down the generations, comes down the religions, that you must behave like this. And that's the religion side of it. It's not Buddha Darshana. It's a Buddhism, the religion, that which does not lead to Nibbana. So if you have Sila Bhata, Sila plus Vruta is pronounced as Sila Bhata. Paramasa means to stick to them, to engage in them. The so when you stick to Sila and you think Sila will take you towards Nibbana, that is also an obstruction because you have thought about it. You have caused tanha to become stronger. So Silapata Paramasa is lost when you become a stream enterer. That is mentioned in the Mangala Sutra, and that's also a well-known sutra in the Buddhist circles. And you will realize now that you can never get rid of Sila or Vruta or Sila Bhata by observing Sila. How can you? How can you do something and get rid of it? You have to get rid of it in the first place at the beginning. Don't do it and then try to get rid of it. So that is also clear there that Sil must stop, because after becoming stream enterer, you are not thinking about Sil at all because there is no person there. If you had a person before to observe Sil, that will not lead to Nibbana. That obstructs the path to Nibbana. So path to Nibbana is you have to understand, not think that there is no person called me. If you think that there is no person called me, and if you keep saying to you all the time there's no person called you, there will be a person, because each time you tell yourself is a thought, and that will nourish the tanha, the bond between the body and the mind, every time you think there is no person called me. So that is not leading to Nibbana. So that is important to realize that it is also mentioned in books, not just once or twice, in many places. And in another sutra, it mentions that the more verses for Sil, more stanzas, more you mention about Sil, the less the enlightened ones become, or let's enlightened ones appear. And that is also clearly mentioned. So you have a more, now you have 5 precepts. If you sometimes have 8, sometimes have 10, and some of these Buddhist priests mention that they have 10 million. They call koti. Kotiyak Sangvara Sile means so many of those that they observe, controlling themselves. They are about their behavior, and they all are thoughts. So they prevent somebody entering the path to Nibbana. So that is Sila. And then I then come to Bhavana. I mentioned this as an answer to a question in the last talk about Bhavana. Bhavana actually means getting rid of Bhava. Bhava, no. Na means no, the negative side. Bhava means an event. And I said every thought is called Bhava in the cycle of Paticca Samuppada. It's called Bhavo, and I mentioned Punarbhavo, a new thought in that cycle after the Tanha becomes stronger from the previous thought by being nourished. So Bhavana really means, the original meaning is stopping thinking. Bhava, no. But over a period of time, it has now converted into a form of meditation, and it's known as meditation in English, and in Pali, it's known as Bhavana. Those days, meditation was called differently. They were called yoga. Now, yoga is not just meditation, they do all for physical exercises as well. And Bhavana has been taken up by this meditation, and the meaning has been completely lost and converted into a different system of being awake through the mind, and hundreds of thousands of thoughts are being produced in some types of bhavana. And this type of bhavana or meditation, I will call meditation rather than bhavana because the bhavana original meaning was something different, is again calming your mind or telling your mind what the body does. The calming your mind is one form of meditation called samatha. Samatha means cessation. Samatha bhavana is the one that was practiced by Brahmins in the past, even before Tathagata was born. Right? And uh, this bhavana method of being awake through the mind has come down the generations, and it calms your mind, it calms your general feelings and be a little bit happy, and it's called one-pointed meditation. It does not take you to Nibbana because there's one thought at the end left, and that's through that thought only you are awake, and that is through mind and vijnana. Another type of meditation, as I have less time now, other type of meditation is vipassana. I'll go quicker now. And vipassana meditation, the word vipassana is a correct word. Vipassana means the darshaniya. Passana in Magadhi means seeing, but through eye of prajna. That's why the word, the letter pa is there at the beginning, passana. Vipassana is V means the spreading, distribution, and when your body disintegrates into the Dhamma, or as Dhamma is seen by the eye of prajna, it arises and ceases, and then it sort of disperses itself, and that is called V. V means dispersing. Vipassana is the seeing, the dispersing of Dhamma. And that is when you see Dhamma through the eye of prajna. The word is correct, but it's been used to a different type of meditation, which tells your body, and I said, which tells your mind about the functions of the body, what is happening at the time that when you walk, you tell the mind that I'm keeping my foot on the floor, I'm bending the knee, and so on. It goes on and on. There are various types of vipassana, and that I said was invented by a Burmese monk in 1875 called Lilius Chua Dr, and that is where it originated long after Tathagata's demise. And then now it has spread into other countries. And some people even think that if you don't do vipassana, you're not a Buddhist. And let's come to that. And the person who spread it all over the world is also a Burmese called Goyanka. And there are various uh, institutions that practice this kind of meditation, but nobody has attained Nibbana through that system. So the Anasila Bhavana, all those three as practiced today, let you have accumulation of thoughts and therefore strengthen the bond between the body and the mind, and that prevents the path to Nibbana. In fact, it takes you back in the wrong direction, completely the opposite way, 180 degrees turn, and that is why there have been no results of anybody attaining Nibbana through dana, sila, or bhavana. There's nothing of that sort recorded in the history. So we'll now go on to the questions and take the questions one by one, if you kindly put them up.
Thank you, Doctor. We shall proceed to the Q&A sessions. I'll put up the questions for you here.
You did mention chitta and vijnana. What about mano? Is this mano the mind you meant that need to be abandoned? Yes, the mind is termed mano in the books, in the literature. It's the same thing. But chitta is different. unfortunately, what Buddha Gosha, priest Buddha Gosha did. He brought mano, or the mana, or the mind, and mixed it up with chitta, and it becomes the same thing. So in Buddhist circles, if you are to ask a priest whether there's a difference between mana and chitta, says no, there's no difference, because in Abhidhamma, it is the same. It doesn't differentiate it. Because it was a shrewd move by Buddha Gosha to obstruct the actual path to Nibbana by writing various things, altering things. He brought, if I try to explain it briefly, as there's a limited amount of time, after you become stream enterer or sotapanna, your waking is through jhana, which is through chitta. The waking up mechanism of chitta is called jnana. Waking up of mind is called vijnana, which is the wrong side. It means the wrong side of you are being awake through the wrong side. Vijnana, V means in this situation wrong side. So after becoming a stream enterer, you become awake through jnana or through chitta. And before that, as a prathagjana or as a mundane person, you were awake through the mind, that is vijnana. But from vijnana to jnana, I said there's a trick. There's a trick that you need to practice to move on to jnana. And in this trick, what you do is try and move on to jnana. And once I explained how you look at an object such as a tree, and then looking at the space without the object, and that way you move on to the other. But in Abhidhamma, unfortunately, they brought all the developments of the stream enterer into the mundane section, and he mixed them up together. So he mixed chitta and mano or mind, and he made it just look like one. And that is why people who have read books, people who have understood the so-called doctrine through books, are unable to differentiate between chitta and vijnana, chitta and mind. Chitta is completely different. I said chitta, the mechanism is different. Chitta can be awake without an image falling on it, whereas the mind, you need to have an image falling on it. So it's completely different mechanism, and chitta also brings some knowledge as well, whereas the mind doesn't. It has to come from outside through the sense organs, and also that is completely knowledge from outside. So that is the difference between chitta and mana. They are two completely different things. In fact, what you're trying to do now is to, by practicing, by training yourself to be awake through chitta rather than the mind. So you try to abolish the mind's activity and be awake through a different system, which is at a higher level, so that you can pass on. I said, like on the fence, you can then pass on to the level of prajna. Can I have the next question, please? Right. On chitta as an intermediate system to panya, there is jhana process. Is this the same experience as explained in Buddhism? No, jhana, again, some of these words you will find surprising what were the original meanings. Jhana means you stay, hang on. It's called randima, to hang on to one particular situation. So you have, when you do samatha meditation or one-pointed meditation, you come on to various levels of absorption, and they are called jhanas, and you try to stay in that position, and that is why it's called jhana. But there is no system of jhana in seeing Buddha. In fact, the original word jhana was mentioned after being a stream enterer, when you enter from being a stream enterer to the next stage. so-called once returner. But earlier than that, there is no mention of that word. And in fact, now it is mentioned. And again, it's been like Bhavana has become a meditation. It's now been converted into states of absorption during samatha meditation. So there is no jhana in between being awake from the mind and being awake from chitta. So you just move on to the next stage. But if you take the real meaning of jhana, it means staying, anything, staying in one position, right? But the current applications of jhana in our day-to-day life and our day-to-day discussions of Buddhism is completely different. So you should not get confused. I think it's much better to get rid of that word and not mention that word jhana at all in the path to Nibbana, because the word has confused a lot of people, and they think that samatha meditation and the jhanas that you achieve have something to do with the path to Nibbana. In fact, it has nothing to do. It takes you away from Nibbana. It takes you in the opposite direction. Are there any more questions? Yes, this countless generations, if that is so, why is that for over countless generations that we have been taught, or we have been taught, I think, rather than taught, that charity, mindfulness, and bodily and mental actions and meditation is the correct path to follow. That is what they have said, because if it once the seeing Buddha became a religion based on a person called self doing everything, whereas in path to Nibbana, you get rid of self. You try to get away from every mechanism that produce inside the notion of self. And unfortunately, when it became a religion, it became a self-oriented doctrine. And in fact, it became a doctrine to follow. Doctrine is something that you think of. That's always thought in a doctrine. In fact, to do a philosophy, a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy, you have to think and write a thesis on that. And those people who write a thesis on philosophy of Buddhism or Buddhist literature, they never attain Nibbana because they keep thinking. And if you don't know of anybody who has attained Nibbana, or some of these professors of Buddhist philosophy, or any other priest, let me know. I have not seen anybody. I may not have heard anybody, or there's no one recorded in the history since it became a religion. So it is important to realize that the very basics of this system is a thought, and it is the thought that obstructs your path to Nibbana. So if ever you have a question regarding a thoughts that arising and that brings about self, I, or me notion, then it obstructs the path to Nibbana, because Nibbana, in the Dhamma or Nibbana, there is no person called me, and it is actually seen not by me or him, it's seen by the eye of Prajna. Any other? Right. How would you practice non-self to stop thoughts as it seems happen instantaneously without our control? Thank you. This happens instantaneously because you have been trained from young days to think. When you go to your schools at education and levels, they think that if you are creative by thinking, you are a good student and you are an intelligent student. But in Buddha Darshana, or seeing of Buddha, it is not. It is completely opposite, and that is why your mind and the memory have been trained to communicate with each other all the time, except when you are asleep. So if your mind and memory communicate with each other, even if you are at rest, even you want to get rid of all senses, activities of the senses, or any impulses, images coming through your senses, what happens is your memory keeps sending various messages, because you're so trained, your memory and the mind so closely linked, it keeps running all the time. It sends currents of thoughts all the time. And there are very good reasons that we understand, and that is because in the religion they have they have put inside our brain washed with certain things. Like there are three things that they do. One is that they say that this life is suffering all the time. They say, and there's no happiness in that. If you want to be happy, you have to see Nibbana, which is wrong because it's not the happiness of the mind that is Nibbana. Happiness and sorrow are features of the mind, is duality, and in fact, those two arise at the same time. Unfortunately, your sense organs can look at only one side of it, whereas the eye of prajna can see both sides of the duality, but that is in Dhamma, arising and ceasing. So, in normal circumstances, you have happiness and sorrow exactly at the same time, like just like light and darkness. If you switch off the light, you will see darkness, and darkness didn't come from anywhere. It was there, but you couldn't see it because the light was on. Because you can see only one side of the duality with your senses. So that's one of them. Then there's always saying that you must help somebody if they have helped you before, which is a good thing. But it gives you a notion, it gives you some um, information to remember all these things that other people have done to you, which also enriches your memory. But I said the memory is the culprit here. The top of the culprit is the command and control of everything. You don't have anything in the memory, and you can drop everything that's in the memory for a moment. And that moment, the eye of prajna is free to arise. It will not arise as long as your memory keeps sending currents to your mind or giving information from your memory. So there are things that people have, religious people have entrenched while you're young, when you are 2-3 years old, before you know what is good, what is bad, what's right and what's wrong. They have put these in your brain, which virtually brainwashed. So they keep coming in the future. Moments whenever you try to stop thinking. And that is why you cannot just shut off your senses straight away. That is why you have to have a trick, a sutra. And that sutra I said by looking at object, first getting rid of the rupa of the object by looking at the space between that object and you. Because in the space there is no rupa, but there is seeing. So in a thought, I said there are three components. That if you see a tree, you have eye that you saw, then you said you have seeing, and then the object you saw, tree. So what you do is you separate the seeing part from eye and the tree. And that is the sutra, that's the trick. And then you be awake through seeing without an object. That's why you look at the space, because there's no object there. And then you don't feel as if there is a person called me who's seeing at the time. So then gradually then you move on to the next stage by even stopping seeing once you train yourself. So that's basically you're just preventing your memory from using to identify that object as tree. So basically you're destroying the memory slowly to help you to move to the path of Nibbana. I said you don't lose those when you become a stream enterer. It gets stored somewhere else in a different format. I mentioned that in the last discussion. So it is very important that you do not stick to the things that produce thoughts, that produce the notion of self. If ever you want to do something, to find out whether you should do it or not, first get to know whether it produces a thought. If that produces a thought, that is not the way to Nibbana. Are there any more?
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the questions from the audience. We should put an end for this talk. On behalf of the monk and management of Mahavihara, we would like to thank Doctor for his time and sharing his Dharma knowledge with us. We would like to also express our gratitude to all our sponsors for their kind donations and all our audience for joining us tonight. Good night, everyone, and have a pleasant evening. Suki Hanchu.
Thank you.